Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session on unlocking synergies. Very pleased to have you here in the room, and also, of course, a warm welcome to our online audience that is following us via the live stream. My name is Marie Timmerman. I'm the national contact point in the Flemish part of Belgium for both the Digital Europe program and two subdomains of Horizon Europe. And being a contact point, an NCP, for both programs means that the question of synergies between programs has kept me busy for quite a while now already. And looking at the interest in this session, I might get the question that I'm not the only one with still a few questions. Synergies have become some kind of a buzzword over the past years. We hear a lot about them, but there's still a lot of unclarities. And we have to see there's a lot of different forms of synergies, and some do work better as others. With this session, we want to look at both sides. We want to see what works well already, look at some good examples, see how we can reinforce them. And we will, of course, also address the challenges and see how these hurdles can be overcome. The aim is that at the end of the session, we will come up with some concrete recommendations towards the policymakers on how to better unlock synergies. We have put together an interesting panel for you today that will look at the topic of synergies from the different perspectives. We will hear what the Commission thinks about synergies. We will learn from some good practice examples, and we will talk about existing support mechanisms. I will introduce the panel to you in a moment, but we also, of course, would like to hear from you, from our audience, here in the room and online, and gather your questions, gather your input on the topic. As you're quite a lot in the room today, and we want to include the online audience as well, we've opted to use Slido for interaction with you. You can see the Slido codes on the screen behind me, so I would like to invite you to take up your devices, log into Slido, and I would suggest let's start by getting a close look, a little look at who's in the audience today. There's two short questions in the Slido. Please let us know which stakeholder group you represent and which country you're visiting us from. So I see the answers are coming in. That looks like a really nice mix in the audience. This is exactly what we had hoped for, so great to see this. Let's have another look at which countries you are from. Big majority for Belgium, but I think that's quite normal. We're in the center of Brussels. But it's good to see that also there's a lot of people visiting from different countries. So thank you very much for this. Let me now introduce our panel to you. If I may ask my speakers to come join me on stage and take your seats.
See anything? No.
So, welcome everyone on the panel. Let me quickly introduce you to the audience. Starting from the far end of the row, we have Walter van der Velde, Policy Officer Foresight and Program Synergies at the European Commission and DG Connect. We have next to him Nienke Schritte, Head of the Health Information Systems Unit at Cienzano, the Belgian Federal Health Research Institute. Daniela Hackel, National Contact Point for the Digital Europe program in Austria and Task Lead at the NCP project Idealist. Nikos Avgerinos, Product Manager at Performance Technologies in Greece and Coordinator of the Digital Europe Deployment Project Tracy.
Nice to meet you.
We have Irina Kondratenko, Project Manager at VITO, the Flemish Institute for Technological Research, and the Coordinator of the European Digital Innovation Hub for Energy in the Built Environment here in Belgium. And last but not least, Merve Karaman, Senior Policy Advisor for the Digital Economy at the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. Welcome everyone, thank you for joining us. Before we start discussing the practical experience from our panel, I would like to ask Walter van der Velde to set the scene and give us an insight of how the Commission sees synergies.
Thank you. First challenge. Yes. So, good late morning. Walter van der Velde, I work in DG Connect indeed, and Synergies is in my portfolio. Don't expect me to know what the Commission thinks about Synergies. That's how I was announced before, I don't know. So I know a few things, but it's a pleasure always to add a bit of salt and pepper to that vision, and which then most in the way what the Commission should think about Synergies. So let me start by setting the scene. I mean, setting the scene on Synergies cannot avoid this here, the Digital Decade Compass. I mean, in a conference that focuses on digital technologies, this is our compass for 2030, that was mentioned before in the opening session. In 2030, what we want to achieve as Commission and as Europe-wide is a number of very concrete objectives that have to do with digitalization of businesses, digitalization of governments, the whole infrastructure that is needed for that, and the skills that we need, both in terms of the ICT specialists and the people who will need to use everything in the end, which also requires a certain degree of digital literacy that we want to achieve. So this is our compass. It's not a compass that says you should go there or there. We want to go in all those directions, of course, at the same time. I sometimes think of it as like being on a ball with the compass on top, and then you go in all directions. In the end, where the magic really happens is when all these four directions connect. Yeah. You have the skills, you have the infrastructure, you have the businesses, you have the government. In 2030, hypothetically, we should be ready for the next stage, which was mentioned also in the opening, in the final discussion at the opening. That is when we have a digital backbone and the people that manage to use it in Europe that can bring us to a level of innovation where things spread much more easily and where we can do new things. So then, how do you get there? And then there is this narrative, the narrative that we develop with our programs. And the big programs that we have is Horizon Europe and the Digital Europe program. I mention here also CEF, the Connecting Europe facility, in particular the digital part. And so here the story that we kind of tell people is if you want to achieve the digital compass, we need to work on those three things. We need Horizon Europe that feeds with the new technologies, the top-notch developments, the things that are upcoming, that we mature, de-risk, and try to bring them to a level of where they start to be usable, which we do then in Digital Europe. Digital Europe is more a capacity building, take-up program where you try to, in certain areas, use all those technologies that come out of the pipeline of Horizon Europe to go to real users. So that can be in health, can be in transport, you name it. So these are the silos that you see. And then to make all that work, you have an infrastructure that is basically the Connecting Europe facility where it has to be Europe-wide, not just a few, centers of excellence, 3, 4 in Europe. No, it has to be all over the place. And that's why it's so important to have these connecting facilities. That's a nice story, but now you have to make it work. You have to have people like you in the room, be it policymakers, being researchers, being director of labs, to play this game. And that's not easy, but in some cases it works. Like these are examples where we have a synergistic story to explain why certain things matter. Like in supercomputing and quantum, you have, this is the bottom line, you have clearly activities delineated in Horizon Europe. You have clear activities in Digital Europe and coherently connected. And you have the whole Connecting Europe facility, which we're upgrading to networks for quantum communication. So there you see this all working, and the same for some of these other examples here. So the story works to some extent for certain areas, and there are features to those areas that I will come later why I think they work in certain areas and not. But if you then expand to where is digital in our European programs, it's not just those three that I mentioned. This is not even complete. I mean, it's not as big as the chart that Luc used of all his people that he works with, but it could be a real big chart, a puzzle of programs where digital matters. So what's the story there? I mean, we cannot imagine stories for everything. We cannot imagine stories to create a synergy. Synergies somehow have to happen. It's something that should be in the mindset, it was mentioned before, of people working in that ecosystem at all levels to exploit as much as possible the possible combinations, the synergies that you have in those different programs. Digital is unfortunately everywhere. It's very hard to do a focused approach. It will, by definition, be dispersed, right? So, synergies, there is no magic. I think that's my magic. But maybe we can achieve something. And so I think to achieve that, we need to look a bit closer and much closer than that what anybody is doing for the moment. Because if you look at the typical slide, and I've seen this many times being used, this slide, types of synergies. You have this one. There are 4 types of synergies. Complementary funding. You combine funding in a single project from different sources. Sequential funding, you do a project, you take the results, you feed it into the next project sequentially. Alternative funding, you don't get the funding and you go look for money somewhere else, nice synergy. Transfer of funding is a bit more technical. It's where member states are able to transfer certain parts of, for instance, the Regional Development Fund into Horizon Europe itself to support projects that are from their country on the topics that are supported by the GDPR, sorry, not the Regional Development Fund itself. So it's a bit more technical, but that's a... So we're talking about, I don't dare to say, but it was the grant addict will find itself here, right? It's a matter of looking at the money, how can we combine all that? And that's one way to look at it. But if you look at the incentives for this, it's clear. It's higher efficiency of public spending, greater effectiveness in implementing the program, and so on. So we're looking here at the machine. Anna said it this morning. We focus on a machine and we see how good is it to spend its money. Preferably in ways that create synergies in that way that we manage to recognize at the financial level. And it's nice, it's easy to measure, it's easy to track, so we can make nice graphs and say, you see, it works. But where is the result? The impact. So, and I think we need to be a bit more careful in understanding this. What do public funders want to achieve? And that's my list here. And what do stakeholders want to achieve? And those two are not the same. I mean, there's no stakeholder that has as objective to digitize Europe. That would be crazy to have that kind of objective, right? You have something else in mind. You want a company to take off. You want to get your PhD and stay in academia. You can have 100 things that a stakeholder wants to achieve. And what is a stakeholder? Is it the person? Is it you individually here? Is it the organization for which you work? And what is the power of the organization to influence what you want? And what is your power to influence what that organization wants? Because, of course, some organizations like, say, IMEC, say, Fraunhofer, they are committed to playing a certain role in this ecosystem. Not maybe the pure role that we as Commission have in mind in our top-down logic, but a certain role to be a facilitator for the stuff that we need there. So there's much more there than our top-level story, and just assuming that people will play the game that we as Commission tell them to play. Right? So to put it here, if you talk about synergies, you have to think about top-down synergies, which is the story that we as Commission like to put forward, and bottom-up synergies, which is the way the people who do it in the end create their synergies for their purposes and for their interests. And somehow they have to meet in the middle, is the slides on the right, sorry, where trust becomes very important. I mean, you need to somehow create a trust, a level of understanding between those two sides where there is a commitment to play at least a part of that game. And that is for the moment, I think, where we still have work to be done. We need to understand very good what's happening at the bottom. we need to better express also what's happening at the top, because my slide, the one with the 3 axes, I'm sure you had not seen it before. At least it's not big. It's a story that we don't publicize as such. So we have our stories for the individual programs, but the Commission is not so good in actually expanding the view and saying this is what we broadly try to achieve. Digital Decade is definitely a good example there, where we do try to create that overarching logic. So let's try to fill that in. And now I'm going in glad ijs, as they say in Belgium. I mean, I'm just a few proposals of what this might look like. Hope it all pops up together. So on the top, you have the strategic programming, the overarching narrative. That's the thing I was trying to illustrate before, which we in our jargon, we call what's the intervention logic of the program, and then we try to design the program so that it satisfies that intervention logic. If you know Horizon Europe a bit, you know the key strategic objectives, then the strategic impacts, and it goes on to the destinations and so on. So that is the intervention logic of Horizon Europe. And you do that in an operational way. You implement a machine, rules for participation, eligibility items, funding rates, and then you start thinking about this combination of funding. It's a very complex story. But below, where we are less good, and as I already mentioned, is the organizational and the individual level of synergies. That is for the individual, the objectives, the mindset, the incentives, the individual level synergies. I mean, as a researcher, I've been there. I've done projects for the European Commission out there. If you have one project and you try to get your next one, what do you think? How can I reuse some of these results? Fine, without telling the Commission too much, because otherwise I will not get the money. Right? So there is a certain reuse game also that is happening all the time. I mean, we don't have to deny it, and that is an incentive. That is what people are trying to achieve. So when you have this organizational level, I mentioned it before, I think it's very important, is the organizational alignment and the capacity that this organization has to negotiate its terms, both the terms upward and the terms downward. I mean, IMEC is a good example. It's such a big thing. We cannot ignore it, what IMEC wants to do. Yeah? And at the same time, if you work for IMEC, you cannot ignore that you work for IMEC and that there are things. And then there is the game that is to be a natural game in any research organization, which is to negotiate those relationships. So again, trust matters. On the both sides, you have, I've picked a bit from economic theory here, bounded rationality and opportunity cost. I mean, if we want to create synergies top-down, we can either throw money and hope that the synergies will happen. You heard that before, and usually they don't, or they don't in the way that we want them to happen to achieve our overall goals. Or you do something else, and the something else that we do and that work are on the right column there, and I think Roberto already said it clearly. When we take policy initiatives, that is actually a signal of trust. You try to send a message to the stakeholders saying, hey guys, we're committed to AI, and we want to put the resources and the organizational efforts, our opportunity cost, we want to make that cost to make that happen, to help you to achieve it, right? So it's where the arrows meet. We do that for chips, for AI, for cyber, for data. Another thing where we are successful and which is key, and again, I'm almost repeating what was said this morning, but we do partnerships and multi-country collaborations. When you manage to do that right, it works much better. Cybersecurity is a dream example. In cybersecurity, you know so well who are the key players in every country, who are the few top-notch companies in the area that can play a role, that we as Commission can have our hands on the ecosystem. We know everybody, because it's not that complicated for certain areas. For AI, we have a long way to go. I mean, we knew very well the AI research labs and everything, and for years, I'm an AI person myself, I'm partly guilty, but for years we've been focusing on creating the ecosystem for research. And it's only now that we see, but that's not enough. We don't just need the algorithms, we need the data, and we need the computing power. How long have we ignored that part? And now we try to put the ecosystem together by these multi-country collaborations and what have you through these acts. And then the interfaces and support, we'll hear more about that, but again, the trust matters. The NCPs, the European Digital Innovation Hubs, and the different support structures in the member states and the associated countries are very important elements to make those two arrows meet. Because those people, they are the trusted in-between. They can live with the incentives from the bottom, and they can live with the incentives of the top, and they are the ones that can make the match and make it work. So I will not go into that. You will get, I'm sure, the slides, but there's a lot to do here in Synergies, both on the top-down side still, and on the bottom-up side. And we will hear several of the interventions are about addressing some of those issues in a successful way. So that is, so my time is going in reverse. I guess that means I'm over time. My final slide is one where I want to Synergies are hot. I mean, Synergies is very hot in the Commission. The next framework, the next financial multi-annual financial, whatever it's called, and the next Horizon Europe will put Synergies very important. I mean, we need them. And so there is a Commission internal network that crosses the whole area of Commission services to look at Synergies. We're looking at best practices. We're trying to promote Synergies in the current one, but we're especially trying to prepare a consistent approach for the next one. How will we put, I would almost say, Synergies by design? And again, what I'm really prepared to fight for is to not make the mistakes that we only think on top-down Synergies by design. We need to take the incentives from the bottom and to see how those synergies can meet in the middle. And I think that's the challenge, and I hope out of this conference we will get from you as well some recommendations of how to do that. Thank you. Apologize for the time.
Thank you very much, Walter. Yeah, what I take from your presentation is there's indeed a lot going on, a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities. And what we want to do with this panel today is unravel the theory a bit and look at how this can work in practice. Look at, as you said, the people who do it in the end. Before we start listening to our panel, I would like to invite the audience, if you have any questions to any of the speakers, the Slido is open until like 50 minutes before the end of the session for your questions. Feel free to submit them. Ideally, if you can, point out to which of our speakers you want to address your question. And we'll hear from their examples now, and then we'll look together at the questions that you have. Nienke, at Cienzano, you do look at synergies from the different programs. You try to make this happen. I'm very curious to hear how do you do this.
Thank you, Marie. Yes, so my name is Nienke Schutte. I work at Cienzano, which is the Belgian Public Health Institute and also a research institute. So both health and science are at the core of our mission. A lot of the external funds that are funding Cienzano's research are coming from the European Commission. And we work on the intersection of health, of digital innovation, technologies, infrastructure, and data science, which also means that we are profiting from very different EU funds. So, as you said, Walter, we are playing the game. So how to find the right topics within all these funding schemes that are out there? Well, first of all, it's very important to identify the hot topics. So what are the hot topics currently in science, in research, and in innovation? Well, I think a very nice example is, and we heard it before, is artificial intelligence, is AI. Because if you scan the new Digital Europe program, there's a lot of AI in there. But also if you scan the Horizon program, there's also a lot of AI in there. And even now, if you scan the EU for Health program, it seems that also health has discovered the importance of AI, and there is a call in there about AI. What is further needed to really make sure that you have a successful proposal and that you find the right topic? Well, what helps is to have a network of partners that can help you identify the topics that are currently ongoing and that we can apply for. And I think also, Lucas mentioned it already in the opening session, it's very important to have this network of excellent partners. And this is the first step actually to have, and this is the third trick, to have a ready-to-apply consortium. Because I think it was also this morning mentioned that self-sufficiency leads to mediocrity. So I think it's very important to have a ready-to-apply consortium with some successful partners that can identify the right topics and help you to arrive at a very fantastic research proposal. So what about future topics? Well, I think Walter also already mentioned it before. It's very important to maximize the output of your research by merely making sure that it has a very large impact. And I think during the COVID-19 crisis, we identified already that some of the projects really had a very large impact on a very short term. But however, now the immediate crisis is over, we are looking at more long-term challenges, especially in health. For example, climate and health, but also the new digital innovations and health. But really, we need to make sure that the outputs of your research are maximized. And then, of course, there's a next step, communication, outreach, dissemination. Because here it is very important that you build upon the outputs of previous projects. Because now what we see is there are a lot of very successful projects and their outputs are put into a PDF file and then they are sent to the PDF graveyard where they're slowly out there to die. While some of these research outputs are very valuable and can be then reused, as also Walter said, in order to make sure to maximize the impact of your research. And then finally, yes, I've put it on my slides, lobby, I've put it there. I dare to do it, because it's very important to keep the focus of the policymakers on the hot topics. But I also would like to plea that researchers have a large responsibility to bringing the urgent research questions to their attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Nienke. Listening to you, it seems that finding the different topics within the programs works quite well. Nearly seems too good to be true, actually. Is there any practical challenges as well that you think that it could be even better?
Yes, there are also indeed some challenges also. So I think what is important to mention here is that we already saw in your previous slides some of the fundings can be used sequentially, which is what we do a lot. As I said, Scienzano works at the intersection of health and technology, which means we have some programs funded through, for example, Horizon, and then the same project carries on under EU for Health flag and then carries on under another funding scheme. However, it's very difficult to complement funding at the same time, for example, to have different projects that have different pillars funded through different funding schemes, which actually could maybe perhaps help research, but it's also quite difficult to combine. And I think also what is very important is the in-kind contributions that are different for a lot of the EU funds. For example, EU for Health requests an in-kind contribution of the own institute for 40%. I think digital is about 50%, and then Horizon is 0. So there is some differences between the funding schemes, which make it sometimes an organizational challenge.
Okay, it's good to know, and I think that's good to also carry on throughout the discussion. We've just heard about an example of a quite experienced stakeholder, I would say, that knows to find their way around the different funding programs. Looking at my colleague NCP, Daniela, there are also stakeholders that are quite new to EU funding, that might not have the resources to really dig into the different programs. How can they get support if they want to make use of Synergies?
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Well, yes, actually, I mean, there are a lot of services, NCPs, the National Contact Points, do offer. I'm sitting here today for Idealist, the NCP project in Horizon Europe Cluster for Digital, and also as Digital NCP. So basically, this is a good example for Synergies, where we're already using Synergies, in collaborating and providing services for the proposals from partner search until the submission of a hopefully successful proposal. So Idealist offers a lot of different services. Some of them are tailored to the ICT community. Some of them are done in collaboration with other Cluster 4 NCPs, so they're not that much tailored, but they have other focuses which fit to different communities. Maybe I can highlight here the brokerage event and proposal idea check, which we offer today at this conference as well. So if you are in the process of finding partners for Horizon Cluster for digital projects or for Digital Europe projects, you're welcome to sign up for the brokerage outside. If you could just go to the Idealist booth, my colleagues will give you more information on that. And yeah, that's one service we do basically for each Horizon Europe call, and now the Digital Europe as well. Another service we do offer also for NCPs, actually we also have activities for NCPs where we get them together and offer trainings and webinars that fit also different kinds of NCPs. So we really try to collaborate here as well. And I want to give you another good example for using Synergies, which is the Idealist topic tree that was developed under a former Idealist project. And that's actually a kind of a best practice where we bring together NCP knowledge and where we do link call topics of Horizon Europe and of Digital Europe from the past to the future. So that's basically what you do yourself. We try to support here all the organizations who probably don't have that much resources to do that on their own. And we also try to integrate a lot of topics. So we, of course, we're starting with the digital topics related to Horizon Europe. And since we're now dealing with the Digital Europe as well, we integrate those topics. And together with the knowledge we have as NCPs, we link the topics, and we therefore give the proposer and also the NCPs access to a more consulted information on where to find the right results coming from Horizon Europe, and probably to use them to do a Digital Europe project in a new call topic. So, well, it's a growing tool. That's never finished, and we're on the way to go ahead here and to work together as well.
But if I may pick up on that, thank you very much. That is a great example on how you start linking the Digital Europe topics with the Horizon Cluster 4 topics. Thinking what Walter said in his keynote speech, digital is everywhere. Are there any plans to further extend this? Because we see digital also in the different other EU programs. We see them in the other clusters of Horizon.
Yeah, actually it has always been the idea of the topic tree to integrate all digital topics related to any or coming up in any Horizon Europe program or cluster. Well, that's a challenge. So we're faster in integrating now the Digital Europe topics than we managed to integrate all digital-related topics in Horizon Europe. What it needs is strong collaboration. What it needs is really the knowledge of experts, of NCP experts, also the support of the European Commission. So we do interviews with project officers in getting the links. They're the experts in knowing what they put on the table and what has been done in the past. So the topic tree should then give the proposer and also the NCPs access to past call topics, and via that one you should be able to find out what projects have been funded. So the idea is yes, but the challenge is there.
Okay. But it's great to see that there's, I think, more than a start already, and good to know also that the plans are to extend this. To really provide that support of finding follow-up projects if you have done a research project on how you can roll this out into practice. But there's also the example of the other way around. Nikos, you're the coordinator of Tracy, Digital Europe Deployment Project. If I understand correctly, your project does not build on a previous consortium that did research, but you still do collaborate with a lot of other research projects. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yes, indeed. We are not, let's say, in the pathway of being based on the previous project, taking the results and do a follow-up. But we do implement synergies in our core from the very beginning, but we will say the details later on. So, Tracy or a big data analytics from base station registrations and the CDR-SE evidence system is the full title. We are an EU project of 2 years, funded under the Law Security and AI call. Tracy intends to be an innovative digital forensic and investigation platform for the security sector, since we have heard a lot of different domains for health digitalization, data, so on and so forth, but we come from the security domain. And the aim is to identify suspects of serious organized crimes and terrorism in dense urban areas. The need stems from the fact that criminal acts become more and more technologically sophisticated, and this is before the 5G era and the very new, let's say, coming implications and the challenges that this will bring. And how we are going to help the law enforcement agencies is by proposing the use of advanced machine learning algorithms applied on telecommunication service providers' mobile signaling data. This way, we are significantly going to advance the process of law enforcement agencies' investigations and prosecutions. Now, the scope is to close the gap between prototypes and real products. So the aim is to reach a high technology readiness level. In other words, TRL 8 to 9 is expected. So the platform will be proven functionality in operational environment in the Hellenic Police premises. But as I told, we were building on synergies and collaborations. I don't know why this is not changing. In any case, I can. Okay, there you go. So one type of synergies in our project is the collaboration with Roxanne. Roxanne is a Horizon 2020 project that recently ended. And one aspect of this kind of synergies is that we had partners of Roxanne in our consortium from the very beginning. The coordinator in the app, KEMEA, that is the security, the Center for Security Studies of the Ministry of Citizen Protection in Greece, and of course Hellenic Police as the real end user that would use our platform. So we built on Roxanne outcomes, knowing a priori what kind of applications they were studying and what kind of outcomes they generated at the end of their project, identifying the gap and the possibility of creating something that would complement their work. So we, in Roxanne, they used real data and content data, and in our project we thought that we will deal with non-content data, so these were working in a complementary way. And of course, we are now in process of integrating the visual analytics and the network analytics modules in our platform. Okay. So this is, in a nutshell, a way of collaborating with a previous project.
Yeah, you just said it, a way. I think with Tracy, you're quite active also in other kinds of collaborations with other projects. What are other examples on what you do, apart from integrating the results into?
We are following, let's say, an agenda of a different kind of synergies and collaboration, either as a project-to-project approach, as a project-to-cluster approach, and as a project to associations. So both in national and international level. So we are trying to identify projects or clusters or associations that we have common objectives, or we can contribute to their needs and their agenda. And by the time we identify them, we are trying to connect with them and provide either know-how, training material, maybe contribute by offering modules of the platform, or maybe the platform as it is, as an open source application to be used from specific stakeholders that are law enforcement agencies along Europe.
Okay, thank you. I think that's important. That's an important example on how to really make use of what research has already been done, even if it's not your own research. to make sure that all these results do get on the market. And talking about getting research on the market, or let's have a look at the title of the conference, Research to Reality. It's also a core task of the European Digital Innovation Hubs. And Irina, you're one of the coordinators of one of the Belgian hubs. What is your experience with linking the research side with the reality, with the industry?
Yes, I will present now. Thank you for the invitation to be on this panel, by the way. So I will introduce what is the European Digital Innovation Hub focusing on energy in the built environment. It is an initiative co-funded by Digital Europe program, and it's part of this wide European network of digital innovation hubs. It is based in the Flemish region of Flanders in Belgium, and the purpose is to deliver a set of services to small and medium-sized companies. We also serve some startups and mid-caps, but the core of activities is dedicated to serving SMEs. We are supporting them towards successful uptake of advanced digital technologies. Now, the advanced digital technologies, a number of them were already mentioned. We focus, of course, on artificial intelligence. We address digital twins, cloud computing, cybersecurity, to just name a few. What we are doing, we are helping companies to apply these advanced digital technologies in specific applications concerning, for example, smart buildings, smart controls on heating networks, scenarios for sustainable renovation, but also, like, for example, low-carbon construction sites. Now, what we offer to these companies, we offer a one-stop shop. That is the approach, which is depicted. You can see it on the right side of the screen. And then they're supported directly by this hub in areas such as skills and upscaling, reskilling their knowledge. Then on really providing them with a specific thematic knowledge, thematic knowledge combined with possibility to test innovations, to test their ideas, and to validate them in physical laboratories, but also digital platforms, data sets and algorithms, even living labs. I want to highlight here that all the services are upon very favorable conditions provided to the SMEs, because they're either for free or with a very small contribution. The overarching motivation of this hub is really to stimulate uptake of digital technologies and translate that into a real business of companies. We are already 1 year in operation. I will now go into these two questions on how do we bring research to reality, and how do we support companies in their innovation trajectories. Well, connecting to the topic of this event, looking at research and research results, I have to highlight that this hub tremendously relies on research results and also infrastructure and investments that has happened for many, many years and are now being actually unlocked. They're being opened up to the SMEs to make use of them. So in that sense, we use directly research outputs of various programs, funding programs, not only EU, but also on Belgium level and even on a province level, and sometimes even from what has happened on a local level of funding. We engage with companies with a team of business developers. There is a whole range of activities we do with them, and we discuss innovation. We really try to help them. Moving on, how are we really educating researchers? So looking from what is happening on reality and going back into the research field. There is a lot that researchers take from these contacts in companies and helping companies, because they can really see how their research has any market or commercial potential in reality, and also they reflect better on how their results and shaping the results are actually fit for purpose. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I've triggered several points for discussion, I hope. Yeah.
Certainly. I think what you mentioned, this is really important to link research and industry. I think when we discussed earlier, you mentioned it's two worlds and we have to bring the two worlds together. From your experience, what does work well already, and what's the most important point where you say, okay, that this needs still improvement?
Yes, what it comes down to kind of three aspects: speed and effectiveness, scale and impact.
Okay.
For scale and effectiveness, I mean really the skills of a team behind this hub to bridge the worlds of high-level knowledge, high-level expertise, sophisticated equipment, possibilities with the specific context and need of companies, because there's large gap. So that's one point. What I mean by scale, the interventions we do in this hub are of a short nature, few days, proof of concept, expert talks, and so forth. So they're small in scope. And in this level, we really need to gear up. So there are natural limitation to where this hub can help, and I hope that will be worked on in the future to increase. And this brings me to the impact. When I say impact, we shouldn't look at helping companies with just numbers, because contexts are very different. And here in the hub, we deal with a very difficult group, because they're SMEs who are not highly R&D capable, and also who are not in their nature very innovative. So that's a big challenge. And when we look at impact, we need to scratch the surface. It's not just a number of how many companies we have served. It's also what have we done? What has that led to real uptake of these digital technologies into their everyday business? So there are pros and cons in what we do, but there's still quite a lot of challenges to go through. Thank you.
Still some work to be done, indeed. We've talked so far about the EU level, basically, and I think there's an important other layer that we need to address, and that is the link between EU and the national level. Merve, in the Netherlands, you have taken a quite proactive approach of attracting the Dutch stakeholders to EU projects, to the EU programs, and make sure that they get active in those areas that are also important on the national level. Can you give us an idea on how you handle this?
Yes, definitely. As you said, it's important for us as the Netherlands that the digital economy and the digital transition is going very well. And from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy, we have a strategy, digital economy, which I can can I have?
Yeah.
Which you can see on this slide, the Dutch digital economy strategy. We published that, we organized that to make sure that companies go in the digitalization road. Not only the companies, but also the organization and the ministry itself. And to start with that, it's important to know that the Netherlands has a very good position in Europe. We are in the top 3 of the digital economies in Europe, and that makes it for us easier to make that strategy, or the strategy made it easier to be in the top 3, let's say it that way. And our digital economy strategy is based on is aligned on the European Digital Decade targets, so we can reach them also in 2030. It's based on 5 pillars, and on some of those pillars we even have increased level of ambition instead of the same numbers as the Digital Decade targets. And that we can see in the first pillar. Accelerating the digital transition in the SME sector. For the digital decade goals, it's 90% of the SMEs have to be digitally innovative or have some level of digitalization in 2030, and for us it's 95%. And also on other levels. The second pillar is about innovation and skills. That's very, very important for us to have digital innovation across the whole country and across Europe, because it's all intertwined with each other. And also the skills topics, because that's a big gap in the future to have skilled people on digitalization. The third pillar is about digital markets and services. So the implementation of European resolutions are in the right way. So the whole playing field is leveled. The fourth pillar is about digital infrastructure. That's also the core of a digital economy, to have a good infrastructure and to build on that. And the fifth pillar is about strengthening cybersecurity, because that's a very important way also. And overarching topics are on sustainability and strategic autonomy. And what we did on this is that we have said in the beginning of the Digital Europe project that we have a national co-funding budget of 75 million. And that's important for us to make companies and other stakeholders to inspire them from bottom up to decide to join the Digital Europe calls, because it strengthens our digital economy strategy and also the digital transition for us. This is unique within the member states and associated countries, because we have a whole path to national co-funding, which I will be showing in the next slides. And for this, to unlock those synergies, it's important for us to have transparency and to show all parties that we have this national co-funding, publish it beforehand, so it's a trust for companies to know that there are possibilities for them. And in this part, collaboration is very, very important, not only within our own ministry, but also with the other ministries, because there's a lot of topics. We also saw that on health, on infrastructure itself and other topics. So we are a lot of collaborating also with our the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, which is making matchmaking processes for us and talking to the different companies. And this is the path to national co-funding which we show. You can see the yellow part, that's when the call is open for Digital Europe. And we start just long before that, because we have to explore the work programs itself. We have to talk to the stakeholders, to be proactive to the stakeholders, like, okay, which topics are interesting for you, and which topics are we able in the Netherlands to join all together, and how can we build consortia. We prioritize digital Europe topics in the work programs. We first look which topics can be co-funded, because there's a different level of co-funding possibilities. And then we see, okay, which topics are in line and strengthen our strategy. So we select those topics. And on base of data we have, we then say, okay, this is the X amount of co-funding budget for this topic. This also shows which topics we find interesting as a ministry, but also what's available in the Netherlands itself. And then we go to the inform phase. We make it public, the co-funding budgets. We inform also on the opportunities we have, and RVO, or Netherlands Enterprise Agency, works with us to get those people and stakeholders all together and make a good application, help them also with writing the application, not like the details, but reading it with them and giving some advice. And then we have the call, matchmaking on topics, as I said, and a submission to the European Commission. And we have the period of the evaluation, and that's a period we have to wait, but also help companies on a legal basis sometimes, but also in the security guarantee part, which is very new for us now, to see how can we help them and guarantee to the European Commission that this is a company which is trustable. And at the end, the national co-funding, we base the national co-funding on the ranking of the European Commission. Most of the time, sometimes we can say, like, we are going to do it different, but most of the time it's on the ranking of the European Commission evaluation. So we can go to the national co-funding parts. And we hope that this will work at the end, because this is working very well for us, but this is also new, and we are also learning on this whole process. So we will see what it will bring.
Okay, thank you. I'll pick up on that. It's fairly new and we're still learning. What are the things that so far, I mean, which Europe has been up and running for 2.5 years, more or less now. What did you discover as things that still need to be addressed, that should work differently to make it even easier?
Yeah. As I said, we are learning. We are learning, but not only we are learning, the Commission is also finding its ways in the Digital Europe program itself. It's very new. The biggest challenge we have is to the companies is transparency. Because we want to do it beforehand, we want to do it in a good way, and we want to make sure that we have co-funding available. And that's sometimes a challenge because we are also trying to make the work programs in the program committee all together with the member states, but that's not always going in a fast way, which we hope.
Okay.
That's also understandable because the Commission is working hard on it, but it's not working always. But we're going out of, we will learn all together from it, but that's the biggest challenge I think we have at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your experiences. And I would say it's up to you now, to the audience. Any questions? I see on the slide there's a few questions coming in. Walter, the first one for you. The 4 types of synergies seemed only to deal with funding and the monetary aspect. The question is whether this is a narrow vision, ignoring the human factor, the legal aspects, and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. I think the purpose for me to show that slide was to say, well, it's very narrow. It's just that, and it's a very machine-like view on dispersing money and combining streams, but it doesn't really look at everything that's behind it, including, for instance, the human executors behind it, the people in the labs, the people who have to sell the things, the people who have to keep their company running, all the legal aspects also of combining funding. I didn't touch on that, but it's very complicated sometimes. If you know a bit the way we work, so we have a cost-based model, but some of our programs are not cost-based, and combining those two is a hot potato. I mean, it's very difficult to do that in a legal way, and in fact, our current decision for Horizon for digital decade program is to stay away from that particular type of funding because it's a legal difficulty that we don't want to impose as an uncertainty on the stakeholders to go that way until we manage to figure it out probably by the next rounds. So yes, it is absolutely too limited, and because it takes the top-down view of the people who bring the money. And they are happy if the synergies are created at that level, but doesn't take into account the impact level and the machinery below that needs to create the impacts. And there I think what I was trying to say is with those 2 arrows is that we need much more attention on that layer, which is where I find that the things you mentioned in your question are actually situated. So absolutely agree.
Thank you very much. Daniela, question for you. Is there an Excel of Horizon Europe calls with some basic information about the calls?
Well, luckily there is no Excel. No. Well, basically, I mean, if you're looking for Horizon Europe calls, it's better to go to the Funding Antennas portal, where you can search with keywords, where you have all the pillars, all the clusters included. So that's the first step you should do. I mean, if you're interested in digital calls in Horizon Europe or in Digital Europe, I can guide you to, or can suggest to use also the topic tree, where you get all this basic information on those topics as well. But for whole Horizon Europe, go to the Funding Antennas portal. I mean, the Commission provides there a very good tool to search and to find out how to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something? So in the new strategic program, which is actually covering the years 2025 to 27, which is the last part of the current framework program, it has, for the first time, a separate section on synergies and interactions. So we're trying to display more clearly where we see digital influencing in other parts of other clusters, of other pillars, and so on. And I think the next step would be to add some signposts in the call texts, where we say this is a text in health, for instance, where AI, but the basic technologies for AI go to that topic there, maybe even in another program, so that is much more clearly explained how, because it's often the same people at our side involved. So why would we not make explicit those links there? So that's hopefully something that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know, good to hear. There is a quite open question, not to address to anyone specific, so feel free to jump if you have an answer. Given the fact that we have only economic union and not a cultural union, how can we make these synergies last for a longer term and not just in the short term? Are there any thoughts on this? Nienke?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because it goes in a lot of different directions, because you have more cross-sectional synergies between different programs, between different projects, between different initiatives. But you also have synergies that are more, for example, retroactively, building on legacy, as was mentioned before. So I think here there are some low-hanging fruits there, not only to have this cross-sectional synergies. So I think transparency is already quite a first step, the links between the different projects, but also retroactively making sure that whatever outputs are generated in earlier projects, programs, that these are taken forward into the new projects that are about to start. And I think here maybe there's also a role of the researcher, of the role of the small medium enterprise that are participating in the consortia, but also maybe for the Commission to make sure that whatever is built already, that we build on top of that. So I think here, yeah, we need to take those both dimensions into account.
Okay. Anyone else? Nikos, I know that with Tracy you are also involved in...
Maybe to complement on
exactly.
this one. I mean, for example, it would be maybe a suggestion to maybe increase or see how we can use the citizens, the different groups of societal groups, the social science and humanities, in those topics in the European funded projects, and maybe also promote some good examples that they are not just passive passengers in this fantastic journey, but they have a central role, and they can provide meaningful contributions to the, for example, development of requirements for platforms that we are designing and developing in our laboratories or in our desks, leaving aside their feelings and their perception of the utilization of all these platforms and all these technologies. So maybe we also need to take under consideration all these different cultural aspects when we are trying to propose developments and maybe breakthrough and be innovative.
Okay, thank you. Walter, it seems that your presentation raised quite a lot of interest and follow-up questions. You refer to people that are in between the bottom-up and the top-down synergies. Where do you see these people, and what skills do they need to have?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think we have some structures that we're working on that and that are here actually. I mean, NCPs, EDIH. We have this idea that for SMEs, for instance, to take the step towards digitizing part of their activities or entirely, they need a bit of help, right? And that help doesn't come from a program as such, because submitting a proposal, getting through it, I mean, it would be impossible. So you need an intermediate level where these people can talk to and where they are understood, even in their own language, where people understand the cultural, to use the word that was in the other question, the cultural background of the context in which things happen, so that there is this trust and this flow of interaction that makes it work. And it would be nice if some of these hubs develop in places where you find those people. And those people are people that need a lot of different skills, in fact. On the one hand, they need to have a certain level of technical know-how. And since digital is everywhere, that is very hard, because you need digital and health, you need digital and transport, you need digital and the hardware part, and so on. So I sometimes find myself a clown of knowledge in that sense. I know a bit of everything, and not enough to survive probably as an expert in one area, but it helps them a lot to put people together and to say, okay, I understand what you mean sufficiently to know what you mean, and I understand what these people can provide sufficiently to know what they can provide to make it worthwhile for you. So this connecting role of having a certain level of intelligence, a constant search for elements that are at a sufficient level of depth where you can make the connections. I think that's something we should develop in the structures we have, or maybe in something new. So I think, and that can, for me, that can be a profession, a real European profession to make that work. That would be fantastic. Okay, I'm dreaming.
But dreaming must be allowed. And actually, your answer was the perfect bridge to the next question from the audience, to Merve, because Walter, you mentioned the NCPs as somehow in the middle. We got the question on your national approach of co-funding. What is the role of NCPs in the whole process?
Yeah, the interesting thing with our approach is that the NCP is also integrated in our Netherlands Enterprise Agency. So our team within the Netherlands Enterprise Agency are also the national contact points. So they bring all the knowledge together, as Walter said, to have the connection with other countries, but also with the Commission they're in contact, and they're in contact with the field in the Netherlands to know where the possibilities are, how to seize those opportunities. And the role of the NCP is in that way important for us, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something here? I think there is also another functionality NCPs can have. So they act also as communication channel from the end user, the SME participating in the program, to the Commission. So actually we are the ones notifying, okay, there are big problems in this one, this part of the program works very well. So I think that's quite an important role as well. Also to support the delegations in the program committee.
Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. Walter, I have to come back to you. Do you think that RTOs have some kind of obligation in setting the research and development agenda and talking about lobbying and communicating the needs? Because there seems to be a feeling in the audience that the industry is stronger in lobbying than the
What
research
a dream
side
question
is.
to get in trouble if you answer that one. I think it's very good that we have strong connection to industry. I think it's very good that we listen to them. But industry has one reflex, which is theirs, and it's completely understandable, that is that they tend to focus on the strengths. And it struck me this morning listening to the speeches of the keynote, where it was, let's focus on the strengths, because that's where we're good, and then we can lift it from there. And when you that's fine, but when you only do that, you fail to address your structural weaknesses. That is, you just build the pillar, and maybe somewhere behind it crumbles down, and the pillar falls over before you know it. So you have to be careful not to make that mistake. And I think if we take on board the priorities of industry, is good, but we need something to flank that. And RTOs can be a way to do that. Independent experts can be a way to do that. We have in-house expertise that can help there. So it's important, I think, that the Commission somehow develops its own views of what is there next to that. What other do we need than the industry roadmaps, if you want? Yeah? Of course, they are important. They are the people with the weight to make them happen. But don't forget what is around it. There may be hidden gems that we would completely miss and that are picked up on the other side of the ocean, and then we will complain again in 10 years that, damn, we missed it. You know? So we should keep the eyes open there. Open schemes are a way to do that. Listening carefully to stakeholders in consultations on what's coming up, getting our fingers on the trigger in terms of new ideas. And it was said we are very strong in new ideas. I come with a long history out of the FET program, Future and Emerging Technologies, where we were really trying to find the new things. And now it's the EIC who has taken over that role. I think that is extremely important, that we don't pervert those instruments to become also servers of the big industries in their roadmaps, but that we keep them as the source of novelty and we nurture it. It's difficult. You need to always defend the budget for that kind of activity, but I strongly believe it's absolutely important to do that. And RTOs, yes, I think they are at the right level of seeing both the industry picture and seeing what's happening grassroots, and then maybe carving out some areas that are not sufficiently covered by the industry roadmaps.
Okay, thank you. There is a question to Irina that I actually would like to open up after you also to Nikos and Nienke. Irina, you said that the ED has been built on research. Has there been an attempt to do cumulative funding between different projects? And if yes, how did this work? If not, what were the issues?
Well, first, I need to clarify that we don't work on projects within the area. We support companies. Yeah. But if I step back and I look at the European Digital Innovation Hub, that is part of receive co-funding from the Digital Europe program, and I take that as a project, in fact we are a project, then I will answer this from that perspective. So what we have every EDI across Europe is, by the way, funded 50% of their eligible cost from the Digital Europe program for 3 years, initial 3 years. The other part, in many of these European Digital Innovation Hubs, is coming from their national funding, national level funding. For Flanders, it was different because the province of Flanders said, we will not support the European Digital Innovation Hubs with the additional matching 50%. So, retrospectively, at the time we thought that's a little bit of a glitch. But looking at it from perspective of today, I think it was not a bad thing to do, and I will explain why. Because at the time, it really triggered us to mobilize and find that 50%. So the funding that we have at the moment, speaking specifically for the Digital Innovation Hub Energy in the Built Environment, we have a mixture of in-kind, small part. We have province of Limburg, we have a city of Henk, and we have a climate company, Numa. So we have really a mixture of co-funding on top of the 50% from the DEP, and also a small revenue piece. So when you look at it, it's a real. What it does do, it enables us to really work better with each of these co-funding body or organization, and really connect better to their ecosystems, because they do represent ecosystem. But looking back on why they're supporting us, because they really believe in this Digital Innovation Hub, that it brings value for their companies, it brings value to the digitalization of the economy, it brings value to the greening up and sustainability of practices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nikos, Nienke, any experience with cumulative funding?
Yeah, so as said already in the beginning, we are working on this intersection between tech and health. So sometimes we would like to combine the different funding streams. For example, we have more overarching projects, for example, bigger infrastructures that we're building, which could perhaps profit the different pillars of this infrastructure from the different funding schemes. So actually I posed this question already before to Hadea, and they were a bit surprised, and they couldn't give me an example of a best practice. So I think maybe here there's also an opportunity to see if we can exchange these best practices. I know that the NCPs are very helpful in the country, and also in Belgium very much so. But I think here it would be good to actually have some kind of mechanism that shows these kind of best practices and how to go about it, because it's not easy. You have to deal with different rules that apply for the different funding schemes. So it's sometimes a challenge to find your way.
Okay. Thank you. I see there's still some more questions. I'm afraid, looking at the time, we have to conclude this session in a few minutes. Your questions will not be lost. We will take them with us when we draft our policy recommendations. And actually, that's my hint to ask you, to ask the audience here in the room and online last time for your input. As I mentioned, we would like to draft some policy recommendations after this session. We've opened the Slido again. if you have any suggestions on what needs to be done to better unlock synergies, to establish synergies, to reinforce synergies, this is your time to let us know. We will unfortunately, of course, not be able to discuss this anymore in this session, but we would like to take your input with us for the work that lies ahead. And then to my panel, a similar question to you. If you have one wish, your highest priority, what needs to be tackled first to make synergies work better? And if I may start with you, then...
Yes, thank you for the question. Yesterday I was talking with my team, like, okay, what is our biggest takeaway, what we want to give to the audience? Because indeed we have challenges like state aid rules, timeliness, our own organization to have priorities, etc. But what you see is that digital economy is a balancing act. It's a balancing act between seizing opportunities and mitigating risks. So you have to find the right balance in there, and for that balance you need trust. You need to create trust as a ministry, as a government, to the companies, to the field, but also you have to create trust within the organizations and investors for the whole public, because we need, if we look at the AI, if we look at big data, that there needs to be trust, because we are building this economy for the generations to come. Yeah. And if there's no trust, it's difficult for a digital economy.
Thank you. Irene?
Yeah, for me, the most important is that we don't stop at TRL 8, that really their mechanism, their supporting actions, initiatives, however we call them, but they really, and EIC is one example of that, and a really important part. But for me, it's really that I see in my 20 years of experience working as a researcher and many other things, that the results really do not go back into recycling, but they really get into deployment.
Thank you. Nikos?
At least in a sector level, let's say, I think that we need to keep the pace with what is coming in terms of from the policy level up and down to the project level, and in between, for example, the new things that we should take under consideration is to establish synergies between projects, between project results, between ideas, is data. Because the technologies, the methodologies are there, but these are all based on data and the trust that we need to establish when exchanging data. So we need to identify the proper environment and the proper framework to distribute data that will mitigate the risk of keeping behind the development of all these solutions. This is my key outcome from all these synergies that I have seen so far. This stops at the same point that we realize that we have to now share data between all of us as a community.
Okay, thank you. Daniela?
Well, I think there are a lot of wishes NCPs do have, but since we're not really creating the synergies, we're more or less working in a given environment. We ask, or we would like to have, we welcome a good program design, meaning that there is clear information for the NCPs to share with our clients. And well, there is a concrete wish, and somehow you answered it, or somehow you met the wish already, because the Commission had a really good booklet on digital-related topics in Age 2020. So we would welcome again to have kind of this great overview of digital-related actions in Horizon Europe, of course. I mean, since I'm here also for Digital Europe, also targeting the synergy programs. But well, somehow you're doing this for the next framework program, you said.
Nienke?
Yeah, I think there are already quite nice steps that are made. I think here I would maybe argue for some kind of a community or a platform of the exchange of best practices, because we can definitely learn from each other. Sometimes we still see that the knowledge and know-how about how to go about all these different calls and to find transversal topics is sometimes still siloed. And I think here there could be some kind of a more concrete exchange mechanism to make sure that best practice and also success stories are shared.
Thank you. To conclude, Walter, I have a slightly different question for you. Listening to all of this today, what are your most important take-home messages that you would like to discuss with your colleagues at the Commission?
I hear great examples. I love what you're doing in the Netherlands. I mean, if in the big picture, what I would dream about is that the financing worry is taken away from the people doing the project, and that the co-funding is arranged somewhere else, which is in a way what you're doing, right? They don't have to break their heads about how do I find the 50%, because that's a big hurdle for people now to participate in Digital Europe program. And so there are lots of techniques, but it's difficult to do that, and so we need to somehow fluidify that enormously. I think what you're doing is a great example, and the other is it was mentioned also on some of the things coming in now, but a focus on the ecosystems. We need to not just think about the project as a 3-year thing that starts and ends, and then it's kind of over. But this is, in reality, that is probably just a slice out of a much bigger project that goes over 15 years of people really having something ambitious in mind, what they try to achieve, and then they have to puzzle it together somehow. So I think if we would get our hands better on these longer-term timelines that are inherent to research and deployment with the 2030 timeline, the 2030 target in mind, because we shouldn't lose the focus, as Roberto also said, I think then we would have a much better way to trigger the synergies where they matter to do all that puzzle work to make it happen, and as much transparent in terms of costs behind it as possible, so that people can focus on doing the thing. That would be great.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for your input.
Thank you.
And yeah, with this, I'm afraid the session is coming to end. Again, thank you very much to our speakers for having been here today, sharing their experiences, their views. I'd also like to thank the technical support staff that made the session work, as well as my NCP colleagues and the colleagues from the Commission that helped plan and shape the session. And last but not least, big thank you to you here in the room and online for your interest, for your input. I hope this session was interesting to you. I hope it gave you some food for thought. And I know food for thought sometimes takes a while to digest, so I'm happy to let you know there's some actual food for you waiting outside. Lunch break is coming up, so enjoy your lunch. Enjoy the conference. There's still a lot of more interesting sessions to come. And thank you very much.